Hello and welcome back. Let's take a look at how TailwindCSS implement the use of flex for layouting. Today, flex layout is the most used layouting method. Let's start with this HTML element. It's just 4 divs that has some content in it and then an outer parent div. You would notice that by default, div elements are block level elements, and when stacked together, they also stack in the browser as block level elements. Adding a flex class to the parent element, we turn the children to an inline element. Let me put it here, flex. And as you can see, they all stack in a row. And you see the text wraps around the stacked div. This is done using flex row. Flex row puts all the div in row. And you can return it back to the column stack by saying flex call. And this is what you have here. We can use this, say we want to change the orientation of the elements with different breakpoints. I can say when it is at MD flex row. So, and you see right here, it is at flex column, but when it gets to the MD breakpoint, it turns to the flex row. At default, it assumes a flex row. So I'm just going to put it at flex row. And then we can also decide how the text wraps. Let me put flex wrap here, and you will see that the text doesn't wrap anymore. Let me remove the flex wrap, and you see the text in each of the elements. The div wraps around the div as you increase and decrease the breakpoint. But when you say flex wrap, it means the text shouldn't wrap around the page. What wraps around the page is now the div element. The div wraps around the page. As you reduce the breakpoint, you will see that it keeps breaking down because we use flex wrap. Without it, all the div stays in a row, but it is the text inside, the content inside that wraps. So you can use text wrap or text wrap reverse. The reverse just reverses the way the text wraps. Let me give this number so you can see the difference. You can see with text wrap reverse, the div is wrapped with the bottom div at the top. And if you take out the reverse, the div is wrapped with the top div at the top, which should be the normal behavior. Now let's take a look at positioning flex element. I'm going to paste in a div that has 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and 4 of flex element. By default, flex element are put in an horizontal start position that is at the left side. You can use the justify class to determine which horizontal position you want your flex element to be. Justify start is the default. You can change to justify end, which moves it to the right side of the screen. You can change also to justify center, which moves it to the center. You can also change to justify between. Between puts spaces between the element, and the first and the last element are at the edge of the page. There is also justify around. Justify around will put equal space between the element, but the outer part of the element are spaces, and they are half of the equal space between the inner element. We have justify evenly. Justify evenly puts an equal space around each of the elements, starting with a space and then equal space. If you don't want to start with a space, then you use between. Between starts with the element, then the space. But around and evenly starts with a space and then the element. Let me put the syntax in here. So we have normal, start, end, center, and we also have stretch, which is the default value. And to see how stretch works, we need to stretch this parent div, or we need to give it a height. So I'm going to give it a height of H96, and you would see that the height of the parent div is also the height of the children. If I stretch the height to screen, that is to cover the screen, you'll see it's going to cover all the screen heights. So by default, it is justify start, and then you can also do justify end, justify center, between, around, and evenly. For vertical alignment, you use the items CSS class, you say item hyphen start, end, center, and stretch. Let's use this code and let's put in items. And then these are the options: item start, end, center, baseline, and stretch. At this moment, it's not going to do anything because for you to be able to use vertical alignment, you have to specify height for the parent div. So we're going to come here and specify height for the parent div. I'm just going to say height 96. Maybe I should put a border so you can see the height of the parent div. And then here we can now say items start. Item start stays at the top. Items end stays at the bottom. Item centers, like the name, stays at the center. Baseline, we're going to talk about baseline later. And then item stretch stretches the children div across the height of the parent div. Let me start with item start here. To see how baseline works, I'm going to increase the font of this div 2. I will just say text 2XL. You will notice that when the size of this item is increased, that the base of the text doesn't align anymore. 2 is a little bit lower. So if you want all the text to align at the base, you change it to item baseline. So with item baseline, all the text aligns at the base. The default orientation for Flex is in rows, and that is why you see all the children elements stacked in a row. But you can change that to Flex call. Flex call, you can see they are now all stacked in column. The issue is that when you're using Flex call, the item stops being a vertical alignment class. It starts being an horizontal alignment class. Let's do it for items dash. For start, it stays where it is. For end, you see it flows to the end horizontally, and for center it stays at the middle. And this is because we used the flex column. If we did not put flex column, it's going to move to the center here. Let's remove this flex column and it will do its default behavior, which is move to the center here. It's important to take note of this, that the orientation change when you use flex call. Also note that the orientation also changes for justify, which is by default for horizontal spacing. So if you say justify dash, for start, you see it stays where it is, but for end, it goes vertically instead of horizontally. And that's because we're using flex call. For center, it stays at the center. So technically, flex call will change the orientation of the justify and items classes. We can also combine the justify and items class together to center or to move an element in vertical and horizontal position. Let's take a look at this. Let's use this code. We just have an H2 that says welcome to Tailwind. Now let's make it a flex, and then we're going to justify its center, and that moves it horizontally to the center. And items is for vertical alignment, but as you can see, items is not working because items requires height. So I'm going to say use the screen as the height, and then it uses the whole screen as the height and then moves it vertically to the middle. So these are the classes that you need to center any element, that is flex, justify center, item center, and H screen. You can use H screen or you use minimum H screen, which is minimum height. And this could be a text or a card or a form. Whatever element you put in here will be centered. When aligning content vertically, you need to take note of how it behaves when using it with text wrap. The default behavior is item start stays at the top, center stays at the middle, and then end stays at the end of the whole page. Let me take this back to start. If we put flex wrap, the behavior is going to change. It wraps around the whole page. It's as if you're using justify between. Instead of putting everything together, it wraps it around the whole page. And this is because text wrap will wrap the element instead of the text. So you see, if we do text end, it still stays wrapping around the whole page. This may not be what you want to achieve. You want it to be together. So if you want it to be together, then you're not going to be using items. You're going to use content. Content start. And you see it stays together. Content center, it comes in between, it still wraps around the whole page, but it stays in between, and then content end goes below. You probably wouldn't notice any different if the content can be in the whole page, but you begin to notice the difference when the content is wrapping around the page. That's when you begin to see the difference. So if the content is all in the page, you can do item, start, end, and center, and it's still going to behave the same way. But if you're using text wrap, it's better you just change it to content, so that the content, when you wrap, will still wrap the content in the center, start, or end, as the case may be. This video is part of my course on Udemy titled Mastering Tailwind CSS with Project Example. Currently, we have 18 project examples that you can use, so go to the link in the description below for our sales coupon to access the course.